Canadians are concerned about the 475,000 people who now have criminal records in the past years since Mr. Harper has taken power. Over the past years, 475,000 people have been arrested on marijuana possession and marijuana-related offenses. There have been an awful lot of studies and numbers that have been thrown around over the years. Prohibitionists like Mr. Harper are going to have to justify given facts and data.
I tell you, math is hard, let's all admit it, which is why Justin Trudeau was a substitute drama teacher, not the hard sciences like, you know, botany or something. Is he right when he says 475,000, almost 500,000 Canadians have been arrested or convicted, or once he actually said incarcerated, that means put in jail, under Stephen Harper's cruel regime just for smoking a little bit of marijuana? Well, joining us now from Ottawa is our friend Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business. Professor Lee, it's great to see you again. You are a believer in evidence-based policy making, which means check the math first before just going with your gut. Tell me what you think about Justin Trudeau and his approach to marijuana policy.
Well, you're absolutely right. In fact, the courses I teach, the students must, as part of their deliverables, anytime they make a statement in their paper, they must support it with data, evidence from reliable authoritative sources such as Statistics Canada or the U.S. Census Bureau or the OECD or the IMF. And clearly, Mr. Trudeau and the people around him are not, they don't indicate any familiarity with Statistics Canada and with Eurostats. First off, there's an annual report put out on the top 10 crimes in adult courts, tried in adult courts annually. Theft is way up at the top, along with impaired driving, along with uttering threats, along with assault. And way down at the bottom of the top 10, in third last place, are drug possession charges. So what I'm trying to say is he's conjuring up this, or trying to present this idea that this is a massive problem in Canada, tying up huge amounts of resources, tying up the courts, and ruining the lives of very large numbers of young Canadians. And the data does not support what he is saying. He's exaggerated by a factor of 10.
We showed on the screen there just for a moment the convictions for all marijuana offenses, from trafficking to growing to possession, over a 5-year period, 6-year period for all age groups, all, you know, production, everything is 85,000. And that's just conviction. He said 475,000 incarcerations. He said that to the Globe and Mail once, which not only is 6 times as many, but that would presume that all these folks went to prison, when in fact with marijuana use, I think our friend Scott Newer proved that it was only 10 people in Canada in any year are actually sent to jail for this. Let's move away from...
Ezra, let me just very quickly, though, just to show again, you're right. The annual Correctional Service of Canada puts out an annual report to Parliament. Anybody can look it up, showing, and you know, there's been this argument that we're incarcerating large numbers of people. Right now in Canada, in a country of 35 million people, we have about 15,000 people, which is a medium-sized town in eastern Ontario, about 15,000 people. That's not even close to the 475,000 incarcerations. It's just not even close. And by the way, almost 7 out of 10, 67% of those people are there for violent crimes such as murder, attempted murder, rape, and so forth. You have to really try hard to get convicted and sent into a federal penitentiary in our country.
That is a great point. So you're saying, according to Statistics Canada, there are only 15,000 people in the clink in Canada at any one time, 2/3 of them for violent offenses. So that leaves 5,000 people in all of Canada, as opposed to the 500,000 that Trudeau says were there for pot. Well, let's move off the pot thing. And how, I mean, to me, this shows the problem with parties or political leaders that don't have a training in economics or even know how to read a business plan or financial statements. I mean, Joe Clark famously said he studied French instead of economics. Trudeau was a drama teacher, not a math teacher. What kind of problems can passionate politicians get into, like Justin Trudeau, with the tough subjects of math? Like, what? Tell me some worries that you might have about this approach.
Sure. I mean, I'm seeing this in a whole bunch of different policy areas in the last year or 2 years or 3 years. Almost a casual disregard for evidence. I mean, I can sort of shotgun 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 examples. both the Liberals and the NDP are arguing, or at least some of them are arguing, that we should massively increase the Canada Pension Plan because they're saying there's very substantial poverty amongst our elders in Canada. Yet you go and look at the OECD, which draws on the stats from all the statistical bodies of the 34 countries of the OECD, the wealthiest countries in the world, and so that includes StatsCan, working with StatsCan from Canada. Canadian elders have the third lowest level of poverty in the OECD, which means in the world, because we're the wealthiest countries in the world, and we are just behind Netherlands and France with 5.5% of our elders below the LICO or the poverty line. Yeah. And yet you listen to the critics on this and they're saying, oh my goodness, elders are condemned to eating cat food, they're probably dying of starvation or something. It's just not true. Yeah. Let me throw another one at you. Senator Kenney, Liberal Senator Kenney, in that op-ed in The Citizen, suggested that we are wildly over-incarcerating in Canada. Yet we have our incarceration rate in Canada is below the OECD average. We are below not only the United States, even though he suggested that we are inferred that we are over-incarcerating relative to the States. We're below the U.S., but we are also below the United Kingdom. We are also below New Zealand, and we're essentially tied with Australia. Yet you listen to the critics, and you would think that we are incarcerating large numbers of people, and yet there's only 15,000 people in jail. The oil sands. There's people persist in calling it the tar sands. There's no tar in the oil sands. Tar is an artificial substance created downstream in the refining process. But these people are not being evidence-based.
Professor, I tell you, I could listen to you. Yeah, you're doing a hell of a rant there, but I agree with every word you're saying. And I mean, don't get me started about the so-called death of the middle class. As you pointed out to me just in the commercial break, the middle class in Canada is actually doing very well. Thank you very much.
Are.
We're out of time today, but I'd love to get a rain check for you. I want to get you back on to talk about this middle class issue because Trudeau has put himself forward as the champion of the middle class. That's sort of a joke when you think about it, but do we even need such a champion? Can we have a rain check to talk about that sometime next week?
We do, and then we can talk about my 3 op-eds with my co-author Philip Cross, published in the Globe and Mail on this very issue.
All right, we'll talk next week. Thanks, my friend. Good to see you. Have a good weekend. Bye.